for Monday, January 23rd, 2023. Calling the meeting to order. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I will also provide a notice to the community that we met in executive session to discuss personnel and legal matters. I will now move to public participation. If anybody has anything that they'd like to say publicly now, you can feel free to speak on any topic. We also do provide an opportunity to speak at each issue that is up for a vote. So it's up to you whether you'd like to speak early or wait until an agenda item is called. Good evening.
Hi, does this thing work?
It will.
Oh, man, this is the best part.
Yes, I think we will.
Hi, my name's John Child. I'm in the 7th Ward, 2nd Precinct, otherwise known as Garrett Hill. And I have three geographical areas to talk about tonight. This regards to election integrity. One geographical area is Brazil. Wow, the folks, great acoustics in here. This is something. Brazil had an election recently where the results of which apparently were completely bogus. There were not a few thousand people. There were not a few tens of thousands. There were tens of millions of people in the streets of Brazil, a gigantic country. And what were they protesting? They were demanding, guess what? Paper ballots. They have all machines in Brazil, and the whole thing went completely askew, and the population said, wait a minute, this is nonsense. There's another geographical area, and that's in Arizona, where it was determined that 60% of the machines on election day didn't work, and during the adjudications and the testimony, it turns out there's no chain of custody for the ballots. Hello, certified, no problem here. At some point, the third geographical area is Pennsylvania. At some point, we have to get back to what used to be regular voting. See this? This is regular voting. Common sense voting. You have voters vote, they fill it in, and then they count it up, and at the end of the night, they have the results. Now, this is the nonsense we're dealing with now. All of which was declared unconstitutional, by the way, by the appeals court or the Commonwealth Court. Here we go. All right, here we go. See this? This is the Rube Goldberg of voting now in Pennsylvania and practically everywhere. You've got mail-in ballots. You've got voting in person where you fill out the form and it goes into the black box. They say it scans. I bet it does. I don't know. Chain of custody over on that side of the fence is really hinky. The mail-in ballot nonsense is out of control. So my request or my plea is that we go back to, guess what? Common sense voting, where it's done on election day. If you're in the service or you're incapacitated, or we could loosen up the absentee ballot somehow to loosen that up maybe if we have to. But we got to get back to voting on game day, in person, where all the results, on paper, where the results are counted up by people in the community, in the precinct, and then reported that way. Last thing is, here we go. This is, what? I've got 45 minutes to do this. No, I don't. Let's see. Paper ballots, hand-counted, small precinct voting places, absentee ballots only for military and exceptions, one-day election on game day. It requires paper ballots and volunteers. This is not complicated. The other way over here on this Rube Goldberg nonsense is costly. We've got machines. We've got black boxes that whatever they do. Anyway, long story short, we got to go back to the way we did it, not even that long ago. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from the community at this time? I will move on to our, we do. Hi, Roberta. And just as a reminder, comment period is for 5 minutes. I'll kind of raise my hand if I can catch your eye when you have about a minute left.
Roberta Winters, 326 Williams Road in Rosemont, and as a person who has worked with the League of Women Voters on efforts to improve the way our wards are being drawn in Radnor Township, I would like to commend the commissioners for their hard work, and specifically the committee under the direction of Mr. Larkin, who worked long and hard with a consultant to make sure our wards are divided so that by population they're even. And I think we've done a great deal to allow greater access to the polls for several groups of people, and particularly the Villanova students, of which we're most appreciative, because I think young voters are our future. Also, I would like to commend all of those who looked at the different ways and places in which we might cast our ballots, and I would hope that we would consider looking again at some of the polling places, because I think as we try them out and work together, I think we may be able to find some places that might even be better than the ones that we've chosen now. So thank you again for your efforts. I know our voters of Radnor will be most appreciative, and I would hope that Mr. Childs, if he has suggestions about how and where and how we vote, might want to join the League of Women Voters, because I think we have been working on those issues to make sure voter access and our elections are safe and secure and accurate. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ebony Gilly. I live at 260 Highland Avenue. I am the Assistant Treasurer for the RTCA Board, and we'd like to, we talked last month about our site being a possible polling place, and we just want to reiterate that we think we are a great location. We have very accessible, it's an open space inside. There's not a lot of navigating for anybody who has a disability. I know Wayne Elementary is one of the sites that's being looked at. I'm not sure, as a parent of 2 children who came through there, how accessible that is for ADA compliance. I know it is ADA compliant, but how easy it is for those citizens to get in to vote. So we just wanted to say again how pleased we would be for that to be a polling site for District 6. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jillian Norris Santo, 424 Inverary Road in Villanova.
Microphone, please.
Oh. Did you get any of that? Okay. Yeah, my name is Jillian Norris Santo, 424 Inverary Road in Villanova. I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Radnor Township, and I really do want to echo Roberta Winters' comments just now and commend the board and the subcommittee for a great deal of thoughtful, time-consuming work on all of this, and I think the results show that it was worthwhile. But right now, I want to echo second, I should say, the comments of the previous speaker, because for many years, the League in Radnor has advocated for the location of a polling place in the Highland Avenue community. The neighborhood is an old one, with its roots in the township's history. It is a distinct community, like Garrett Hill. Many of its residents are elderly, and many others do not have easy access to transportation, making a polling place within walking distance an advantage. But most of all, we think, a polling place at the Radnor Township Civic Association would show consideration for and recognition of the needs and characteristics of the Highland Avenue community. I'm told the center is large enough and it is ADA compliant. It could accommodate the 2 precincts, much as the senior center did at one time. This choice of location makes sense, and it would remove the need for polls in Wayne Elementary School. We hope the Board of Commissioners will seriously consider locating the polls of Ward 6 at the Radnor Township Civic Association building. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments at this time? Great. I will move on to our consent agenda. I'll first start by asking if there's anyone in the public who would like to remove an item from the consent agenda for full discussion. I'm not seeing any, so I will ask commissioners, are there any items on the consent agenda that we would like to take off to discuss more fully? Not seeing any, I will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Larkin, did you vote? Sorry, I didn't see it. Thank you. Excellent. So this brings us to our main business agenda, and I will open with an Arbor Day proclamation. And I will read it into the record. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, lower heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable source giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our Radnor Township, increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. Therefore, we, Board of Commissioners of Radnor Township, do hereby proclaim Friday, April 28th, 2023 as Arbor Day in the Township of Radnor, and I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands, and do commend this observance to all of our citizens. Therefore, we urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the reappointment of Gail Morrison to Radnor Haverford Marple Sewer Authority for a 5-year term. May I hear a motion? And a second?
Second.
Is there any comment from commissioners on the reappointment of Gail Morrison? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Nope. Is there any comment from staff or public comment? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Thank you. Our next item is a presentation by the Radnor Wayne Little League on the Enke Park Ball Field B lighting proposal. Somebody come forward on this presentation?
I have the precinct boundaries first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just misread it. We're going to ask you to sit for a minute. So the next one is item C.
Point of order, unless you want to move it up, just because we're all here and they can go home.
I will.
It's up to you. I'm just saying. I mean, you call it. Oh, you do? Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Then
I
just
think-
go with the order.
Thank,
Okay.
yeah,
Sorry.
thank you for catching that I missed one, and I think we'll stay in the order of the agenda. Appreciate it. So this is a motion to adopt the Radnor Township recommendations for precinct boundaries and polling locations and refer them to the County Board of Elections. I'm going to start by asking for a motion
So moved.
and a second.
Second.
And I'll ask Commissioner Larkin, can you lead us into this?
Sure. So this is the result of the work that the subcommittee did with our expert. What we did at the instruction of the board was to go back. We were looking specifically for a mechanism to create a single polling place for Villanova and then otherwise create precinct boundaries that made sense given the reconfigured ward lines that we have. The task is made more difficult by the fact that wards are drawn based on the number of residents that live in them, but precincts are drawn based on the number of registered electors, which means that you can discover that you have a ward that, although it uniformly has a large number of people, there are a small number of electors in a certain pocket of that ward. I've had the chance to have some conversations with the Board of Elections. Since we crafted this map, they're pushing back on some of what they're calling micro precincts, specifically the new 3-3 that we would be proposing. The reason that we created that ward and are going to be recommending it, I hope, to the Board of Elections in spite of their pushback is our goal to have a single polling place for Villanova University. Under the statute, there are some guidelines. There have to be at least 100 registered electors, which I believe that we meet with respect to each one of the precincts. But in addition to that, if there, for whatever reason, you deviate from the guidelines, you can always ask for a change for good cause shown. And in this case, it is our goal to ensure that everybody who lives within logical framework, the logical geographical area of Villanova, gets to vote in the same place, which to me is good cause. And going back to the cross-rough that I talked about earlier, the reason that we couldn't just create a ward for Villanova is because there are too many residents there. There are not enough for what you would think of normally as a normal number of precincts, just 2. But on the other hand, there are too many people who live there, so they can't be a ward unto themselves. So anyway, that's the defect. I think that I can say on behalf of the board, or the subcommittee rather, that we have a pretty strong feeling about the precincts that have been drafted, or at least the work that's been done there by the expert on our behalf. There's probably not a lot of work that we can do here on the fly there. I will say that with the exception of the individual commissioners, I'm not sure that we have as strong feelings about the precinct voting locations. So by that, what I mean is I feel very strongly about where the polling location is in my wards. I feel considerably less strongly about where the polling locations are in your wards, not because I'm indifferent, but because I trust that you guys have a lot better information about that than I do. So we, in some cases, made gut calls about where the best locations are based on the information we had in front of us, but now's the time to have conversations. I think probably this is the place that we're going to have a conversation about amendments.
So I will open it up to have that conversation now. Is there any, the packet contains a list of each ward, its lines as proposed, and then there is a polling place recommended. I guess my question is, does the Bureau of Election take our recommendation as is, or are these suggestive?
These are suggestions. It goes to the Board of Elections, and then they have to take it to the Court of Common Pleas to have it be approved by the court. They are not required to accept our recommendations. Our experience, however, has been both in Radnor Township with the people who make the recommendations and looking at other surrounding communities whose boards have made recommendations, that they are taken very seriously by the Board of Elections.
Thank you. We did have some comments from some residents before we started the meeting. I'm looking for a sense of the board. Would you like to hear more comments from public or go into our questions first? Yeah, I would too. I typically go with the commissioner's comments first, but I'm going to suggest that we start with the public comments if nobody has
Well,
any.
but the only thing is, if we start with the public, the commissioners should speak, and then you should probably open it up again for a final 2-minute comment. So, because if we decide, if we end and we say something and they have a big problem with it, we had this issue in the past. I just think it's the best.
That's sort of why I'm asking for a sense, because I don't want to keep going back to the public.
Yeah,
So
I hear you.
I think
I do have something.
I think we're better off starting with the commissioners and
All
then
right.
asking the public to respond to what you're hearing from us as well.
Okay.
So if I
So
could
do
ask
you want to wait for public comment then? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
so
I
I'll
just-
ask you to come back up
All right.
after the commissioners have
There was a problem
had
with
some
that in the past.
discussion. Right. No, that's why I was checking in. Thank you all. So with that, I will open it to commissioner comment. I'm going to look to my left tonight. Anyone over?
Yeah, Ward 4, I don't have any comment. I know the people that came up were from Ward 6, so not to put anybody, but yeah.
Commissioner Abel, would you like to speak to it?
Yep, appreciate it, and I appreciate the neighbors who showed up tonight, speaking on behalf of the Highland Avenue neighbors. I think that is a viable polling location, and I think it's an option that we may look to again down the road, depending on what the school district does with the calendar. I'm still in favor, after speaking with a number of residents, not just within the last month or two, but over the last 4 or 5 years, while I've been in this position. Let's take a step back. For the last 5 years, we've been voting at a precinct, at a polling site, not in our ward. So just to get both polling locations back into the ward is a positive.
Jake, can you tell us where you have been voting?
So 6-1 has been at the library, 6-2 has been at the Township building. So we would lose both locations. We'd lose the library because the area of the library will now be taken over by the 3rd ward. And then the 6th ward was done, I don't know the reason behind it. I think it was due to construction at the library at the time. The Township building was available, so that's where our neighbors were voting. It was problematic for a number of reasons. So to get it back into the ward is a positive. I still am under the belief, and I think many of the neighbors share similar views, is that Wayne Elementary, while I understand the superintendent's concerns if they're holding school, which they currently are not, and we're using other schools as polling sites, there's just the benefits outweigh the pros outweigh the cons. It's got sidewalks, it's got dedicated parking lots, it's ADA accessible with a new elevator. It can handle both precincts, so both polling sites would be co-located, so neighbors can walk together. If you're split 6-1, 6-2 down West Wayne Avenue, you can still walk together to the polling sites, which is what all of our neighbors used to do in the past. So for me, at this point, I'm still in favor of Wayne Elementary.
So in terms of Ward 3, I'm super happy with having our polling place at the library and staying at, we have 2 precincts. One will be at the library, which is great, and the second one will remain at St. Mary's. That's great. What I find interesting is the idea for, Ward 6, for your ward, to have the RTCA as a precinct for 2 reasons, because I do think that there are some unintended consequences with having voting at Wayne Elementary School. I know that on voting days, there are in-services happening, and Wayne Elementary School is not equipped, it's not big enough to have teacher in-services and also have voting. The only applicable logistical place to have voting at Wayne Elementary School would be the gym, and although we do have an elevator, that's on one side of the school. And then people would have to go through the gym where they're holding the in-services, and it just kind of doesn't make sense. So I think there's a logistical issue there, and if schools have to move their in-services, then kids will then have to either do school online to make up days, or they will have to, I don't know, I just feel like it doesn't make sense. There are a lot of unintended consequences. Secondly, I think the RTCA makes sense because of the accessibility to voting for that area. There are a lot of elderly on Highland Avenue and in that surrounding neighborhood. And I think it would get a lot more people interested and out there to vote. So I really do think in terms of accessibility for a certain population, a unique population in our community, it makes sense to have it there.
Well, I think the notion that it would drive up numbers is anecdotal. There's nothing to suggest that. And we're actually moving, Wayne Elementary, it would be less than a mile from Highland Avenue. On the second point on Wayne Elementary, I don't know who you spoke to, but the superintendent was here last meeting. I'll paraphrase, it presents challenges, but they would make it work. And we're using Ithan and the high school, so having schools isn't unusual. To the second point on logistics, I talked with the principal on Friday night, and she said, it would work. And the gym wouldn't be the only place. You have the little library, you have the lunchroom. There's plenty of places within Wayne Elementary
So that's where
that
they
can
hold
handle
their-
2 polling sites.
That's where they hold their in-services currently.
Well, again, I had a conversation with a number of the school officials, and no one mentioned that it would be impossible to do.
Can I just jump in as someone that's kind of, I don't really have a horse in this race, I just have a couple questions I'd like to ask you on how I'm looking at this. So for me, and I think to a certain extent, Garrett Avenue and maybe Highland share a lot of close homes and a lot of walkability and a park there and a lot of great things. So I get the feel that you do want to put them in a higher population, higher density area. My only concern with that, and we run into challenges in 7, is there is public transportation, which would get us for 7-1. There's a bus, and you could argue that there's a trolley-ish for 7-2. What is the public transportation like on Highland? I mean, what's in your SEPTA bus? And then I'll add one more layer, because the school is an issue, and then if you don't have off for primary, I think they're not having off for primaries, maybe in the future. That could create an issue, or if that ever changes, then you have a big issue. So my question is, and I don't know what ward the Wayne Arts Center is, but I think that we do give them a fair amount of money. There's a lot of parking. I don't know if those steps are cumbersome, but I do believe that they do have a wheelchair ramp that, we give them a fair amount of money. Maybe they would close for 2 days and be so kind to allow the voting there. These are just the quick thoughts. Again, I don't have a horse in this race. I'm listening to you two, and just if you could kind of give me a little insight.
Yeah, I'm not going to speak for the Arts Center, but conversations were already had, a few years back. They would have been an ideal location, and they declined.
So I guess we'll just sort of go down this way. So my ward lines didn't change, and polling places didn't change. I represent the 5th ward. But my experience with polling places, we have been in 4 different sites throughout the pandemic because of inability to use some of the schools. We condensed everybody into Ithan Elementary one time. I think that was the first time because we didn't have enough workers. So, because of circumstances over the last several years, we have bounced around quite a bit. I do feel strongly that if we're making a recommendation, we should make one that we think has longevity. For me, when community members come out and ask to be of service to the community on something as critical and important to our community as voting, I would lean into that. That's what happened in our ward with Jay High, and we were embraced by that location and hope to stay there for a very long time. So for that reason, I don't have a lot of insight into the accessibility of the elementary school or the Civic Association, but just the fact that the folks from the Civic Association have come up to offer their space, I would like to lean into that offer and accept it, even if it's for one of the precincts and then one at the elementary school or another site. But for me, it's about having community members come out and say we want to be a significant part of voting in our community. So thank you to the Civic Association for making the offer, and I would very much like to see us accept it. The other polling places don't seem to have this much traffic and requiring that much conversation, but I think this is a special circumstance when you have had somebody step forward this way. So first of all, I appreciate it, and second of all, I hope we take you up on it. Commissioner Myers, or any response to that, or Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, so I represent the 2nd Ward, and am thrilled to now only be 2 precincts instead of 3 precincts, and thrilled to have Villanova as my 2nd precinct, basically. A little more than half of the Villanova students will be my precinct 2, with voting on site there. There will be a few local residents that vote at Villanova, but not many, a handful, really. So I'm thrilled with that. As regard to Ward 6, I think first and foremost, we learned in this process that polling places aren't totally, set in stone. They are rather flexible. We know over the long run, the superintendent has asked us to move away from the school district, if at all possible. We are obviously going to run into problems at Ithan in the next few years, which has 2 polling precincts, and because of construction. I mean, it simply just won't be possible to vote there. And I really admire when a community puts forth a place that is appropriate by everyone I've talked to for voting, as far as accessibility, walkability, probably closer than Wayne Elementary for public transport, though maybe neither are ideal. And I think we should see this as not being set in stone, but I agree with Commissioner Mulroney that I think at most we should put only 1 precinct in Wayne Elementary and put it the other at the Civic Association.
So I have not had any, I don't think I've had one resident kind of reach out and talk to me about this, so I'm fine. I think that putting all the Villanova students in Villanova, I think that's important. I've spoken about my opinion on that, but if they vote at Villanova, I think that's easy. It's easy that it's there, and that members of 771 wouldn't have to walk across Lancaster. Most of them wouldn't have to walk across Lancaster. And the church is good, so yeah, I'm fine with it.
Commissioner Larkin, you want to wrap up any comments based on what you heard?
Yeah, it just seems like a no-brainer when people are asking to host a site and the place that we're also talking about putting are saying they don't want us there. We've been asked not to go to the schools. I feel like this is a simple choice.
Okay, any final comments from commissioners? Do we have any comments from staff? Okay, I'd love to hear community comment.
My name is Pamela Jensen. I live on North Wayne Avenue, and that is in Ward 1. But I have been a member of the Board of Directors of the RTCA for approximately 4 years. And I just want to emphasize how strongly the board wants to serve here. We, as a community organization, exist to try to serve our community, and we feel that this is one way that we could do it very effectively. There will be no conflict with use of the RTCA because there's not going to be anyone else there on a Tuesday in November or May. So the building will be available strictly for voting on that day. The board will do whatever it can to be of assistance to make this work well. As you've heard, the building is very recently renovated. It is ADA compliant. We do have sidewalks. There's a lot of foot traffic on the street. People walk their dogs. It is an easy location. It's a safe location. And we are very enthusiastic about doing this. And I speak for the board in saying that we truly hope that the commissioners will recommend the RTCA as a voting place for Ward 6. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there additional comments?
Hi, Baron Gemmer, South Wayne Avenue. Going back to the initial public comment, I'd like to thank Commissioner Larkin and the subcommittee for the great job they did and the transparency. I think we may have learned some lessons too, and whether there's going to be changes 10 years from now for an independent commission or maybe an extra meeting on each of those so the public can weigh in more, but I don't want that to take away from what I thought was a very good process. I'd also like to echo Commissioner Larkin's comments about Villanova, and I agree we should push the Board of Elections to try and consolidate everybody to make it easier for them, get them more in the habit of voting. So hopefully they take that and run with that suggestion, even if it means 3 precincts in Ward 3. I won't speak on Ward 6. I do have a quick comment on Ward 3. The current precinct polling places, which are St. Mary's and Sulpizio, both of those aren't the best in terms of accessibility because some of the long walks and the drop-offs, so it's good that we're getting to the library on one. One of the things I brought up at the other meeting was perhaps using Radnor Middle School as the second one, which would be closer and possibly avoid some of the construction that may go on next to St. Mary's in the near future. But in thinking about it, it's actually would be, to the extent we can, and I know Ward 6 is now splitting it up, to have both precincts in the same place would make it easier. Then there's no question, except for the Villanova exceptions, there'd be no question about what you're going. So my suggestion would be to have, for Ward 3, to have both precincts in the library. There's certainly there's room there, and given that we're already changing one precinct from Sulpizio, I think that would make it less confusing to the voters. And as someone that's voted within that 2-block radius for over 30 years, including the firehouse at some point, I think that would just make life easier for the voters and perhaps even for the election staff and candidates. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment on this issue? So I am, I'd like to, I'm not quite sure about how to go about if we'd like to move to amend. All I'm hearing is that the issue that is up for debate or consideration or would be to vote on the polling place in Ward 6. Currently, as proposed in the materials, it is Precinct 1 and Precinct 2 at Wayne Elementary School. I would like to ask someone to make a proposal about, I guess, answer my question, which is, are we proposing to change both of those precincts to the Radnor Township Civic Association, just one of those? I'm not as familiar with the location, so I guess I'm looking to you, Commissioner Larkin, simply because you chaired this committee. But do you have an amendment you would like to make specifically about those polling places?
I think that my inclination is to split the difference. Commissioner Abels has suggested that he, well, I don't know. I led by saying that I don't have strong feelings. I think that the school district has said that they don't want us. I was about to say we should split the difference, but the problem is then we're doing half of the bad thing and half of the good thing. It makes better sense, I guess, to just put both in the Civic Center. I'm not sure that that's true. We can ask the Civic Center, who is here, is it too small to handle both precincts?
Would you like to have somebody come up?
You also have to factor in parking and Enki, and it is a very narrow street as well.
So I had a brief discussion with township staff that talked about with the park right there, we could block off some parking spaces to hold them for voters.
You want one or both? Is that too much of a good thing?
I think as far as the Highland Avenue community, if we split them, I think that would be okay, but I really think there's a big need for the Highland Avenue community to have the RTCA. I do believe the facility is big enough. As I come here for the township, it's hard for me to tell because I've never been to the other polling location, the library, to see how many people are coming in. But definitely for walkability, it's big enough. And I think
roughly doubling the population of people who are voting there, which means double the cars, double the traffic, double everything. And as much as I want representation, I also want to be cautious that we're not throwing everyone into that area and creating really long lines, which would be the opposite of a good thing.
okay. Yeah, I think the public record says that it's 4,900 square feet. I don't know how that fits in for how large this area is or the library
It's a
area.
fire code issue. How many people can you put in? If it comes down to a fire code,
150?
is that it? I mean,
I think that's too small for two then.
that's my thinking. I mean, if you could open it up, I know that Reverend Child's church is next door. I don't know if he'd be willing to.
He's here.
John's here. Oh,
I'll have him.
I didn't even know you were here. There you go.
How are you doing? Howard Childs, Second Baptist Church, I guess now, right? Okay. What was the question?
Can we use your church?
Would it be? Are you talking just down at the basement or the sanctuary itself, or?
Or I don't know if you have a room that could hold. I mean, if you're comfortable, maybe moving some pews. I've never been in your church, but I think that the Civic Association, where we've held some of those Parks and Rec meeting, I think it would be cumbersome to try to get people moving in and out. So if you could have 6-1 in one at the Civic Center, maybe 6-2 at the church, but you're still really tying up a lot of Highland Avenue. I mean, it's kind of almost one way. It's really almost like if two cars passed and there's a car on the street, it really is.
I'm going to call a point of order here. We're putting you in a very awkward situation to answer a question that you only heard tonight.
Yes.
We also had a committee who, spent some time rolling up their sleeves and talking about locations. And finally, this is a recommendation only. I think the Bureau of Elections has some say about whether we gave them a good recommendation. So I just wanted to pause to say that you don't have, this is, it's an unusual thing to ask you to come up and respond to. So I just wanted to be
Yes, thank you.
sensitive.
I don't see it as a. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, if you would like us to use your church, then by all means, we can have that conversation. But a lot of the same parking issues would crop up if we use two buildings that were adjacent to one another, and we're asking people to travel from all over the precinct or from all over the ward to essentially the same location. You don't get diversity of geography. There's also been a request from the sitting ward commissioner that we use the school, and I think it makes a lot of sense if we can't put everything in one place to split the difference and say the school is just going to have to live with one precinct instead of two, and we will otherwise use the Civic Center for the second ward, unless, sir, you tell us that you want us to use your church, in which case I led with, we want to go where we're wanted. But if this is an imposition, then I'm not going to ask for that.
What I would say at this point is it would definitely be something that we could look into and get back to you, based on some of the things that we could move around within the church, within the sanctuary. And we have a basement as well. So that would definitely, I'm not going to say it is as big as the hall at the RTCA, but it would be able to accommodate a certain number of, voting booths down there.
My suggestion then is, if you're willing to entertain the suggestion and you are interested in doing so as a part of community engagement, we'd love to have that conversation with you for next year.
Sure.
And we can absolutely change the polling places based on the experience that we have in the coming primary and general elections. If it's not really something that you're interested in, then you can just leave us on red, and we don't need to hear back from you on it.
Okay. I thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right.
That's okay. Because
I'm also, part of the RTCA board too. So, I'm right next door with each other. So, both buildings I'm involved with. So, no problem.
In that case, I'm going to move to amend such that we have one precinct at Wayne Elementary and the other at the Civic Center.
Can we get specific about I don't know which precinct is closer to Highland and which is closer to Wayne Elementary. So Ward 6, Precinct 1, polling place is recommended to be at
I believe Wayne Elementary makes the most sense.
Wayne Elementary, and I'm hearing a motion to amend the proposal for Ward 6, Precinct 2 to now host the polling place at the Radnor Township Civic Association building. Is that right?
I believe so.
Okay.
I'm confused. So the people that live on Highland will vote at the Civic Center, and then what ward is Highland?
No, so all of precinct 1.
6-1 does 6-1 make up Highland, or is Highland 6-2? Then
So
6-2
6-1, so I had it backwards.
Yeah, so
Okay.
6-2, if whatever Highland is, because it's, there's gonna be a traffic impact.
No, I had it right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's on the table for a vote to amend our proposal is that Ward 6, Precinct 1 would vote at Wayne Elementary. Ward 6, Precinct 2
Which is Highland.
would
Okay.
vote at the Radnor Township Civic Association. So on that, a vote to amend, may I hear a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So the amendment passes. Is there any further comment from commissioners before I call the vote for the full proposal of all precinct lines? I did. I will. Anyone from commissioner? Is there any public comment? Is there any staff comment? So I will call the vote. Well, I'll ask for a motion to adopt as amended the Radnor Township recommendations for the precinct boundaries and polling locations. And a second? All in favor say aye. All opposed? We have passed unanimously, and thank you to all of the community members who engaged in this process from beginning to end. I think we got us there, and we will submit this to the Bureau of Elections. Stay tuned for that approval, and your commissioners will be announcing polling places as soon as we've got it formally approved. So thank you all very much. And now I will move to item D, which is the presentation on Enke Park Ball Field lighting proposal presented by the Radnor Wayne Little League. We can get you tech support if it's not coming up.
I got it. Just wanna go to the
We've
next
got
one.
Ian is
Yeah,
coming right
yeah.
behind you to help out.
I'll just use that to guide. Yeah.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm Tom McWilliams. I'm the president of Radnor Wayne Little League. And first, at the outset, on behalf of RWLL, I want to thank the board for having us here tonight to speak. Radnor Wayne Little League just finished our 70th year of play. We are very proud of that. We are part of the largest youth sports organization in the United States, which is Little League International. Notwithstanding our size, we are the only youth sports organization in Radnor that does not have a lighted facility which we can have access to. And we're also in the minority in our district of Little Leagues in which we play, which are all local townships. The American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry and the Mayo Clinic both say that one of the best things you can do for the mental and physical well-being of children is youth sports. We found that very much to be the case during the pandemic. RWLL was the first youth sports organization to return to play. We got back on the field toward the end of the summer of 2020, and as you can imagine, our numbers exploded because we were literally the only game in town. So that was great. We were thrilled. Our numbers have continued to grow. And now with the success of the Phillies, which we're also very excited about, history shows us that our numbers will continue to grow at a breakneck pace. One big problem with all those numbers, we have limited access to fields in the township, and we've reached a point where we have a whole lot of kids and not enough places to have them play. Installing lights on Enki B would add an estimated 15 to 25 hours of playtime, depending upon the time of year, for both our baseball and our softball players. We would do this at no cost to the taxpayers, and we believe this would be a very significant asset for the township moving forward. One other question that we've received repeatedly is Enki B. The reasoning for Enki B is that it is farthest from Ivan Avenue and farthest from our neighbors. So with that, I'll turn it over to Matt.
Thank you, Tom. My name's Matt Chahulski. I'm a resident, a parent, coach, board member of Radnor Wayne Little League, and one who wants to leave our community and our athletic fields in a better position than they were left to me and my children. So that's the reason I'm here today. Tom went through the why. I want to take you through the what and turn it over to Brian Ertl to take you through the how. We took a collaborative three-step approach, really working. Let me get to the slide here. I guess it would make sense. I don't want to take, there it is. We took a collaborative approach, working with not only the township, which is obviously instrumental in our approach, making sure we're hitting on all the ordinances, the height of the lights, the layout, the spread, the floodplain, stormwater, timing, cost, etc. We believe not only did we meet those expectations, but we far exceeded them, and you'll hear in a bit why. We believe we adequately addressed all the concerns, not only of the township, but of our residents, specifically those that are local to the park that would be affected by light spillage, casting of the lights at night, etc. And we'll get into that in a minute. We've been very receptive, and we're receptive to your feedback as well. That's why we're here today. We went through the Department of Rec, went through one meeting with them, got their approval to be in front of you today. We worked to address everything that the concerns and ideas and things that we could bring to the table, and obviously, you'll bring things that we haven't thought about to us. And funding, last but not least, this is not taxpayer funded. We are supporting this effort 100% through Radnor Wayne Little League. We have a gentleman here with Musco Lighting that Brian will introduce. We have a maintenance program covering utility expenses, warranties, etc. So we believe we're in a good spot. We appreciate the time. I would like to give it to Brian Ertl now to go over the how. Brian?
Thank you, Matt. My name is Brian Ertl. I've been involved with Radnor Wayne Little League for the past 8 years. My son is aged out of the program, but we enjoyed our time there. And I'm in the electrical industry, and I got involved with this 3 years ago, and we've been talking about this for 3 years, and we've been through many iterations of this, and we finally arrived at what we think is the best option. Just real quick, we have with us Andrew O'Connell from Musco. Musco is the brand of lighting that we're going to use, and they have a certified installer that they use as well. Musco is the name in the sports lighting industry, and we looked at other companies, but arrived back at Musco because they're the best. Andrew's here on a Tuesday night with us. He can show his support. He's local, and he'll be with us throughout, so it means a lot to us. So real quickly, just looking at this grid here, I'm going to hit the high points. Light spillage, pole height, and the diagram that shows the light spillage. Sorry, let me get back there real quick. So this slide shows what a typical Little League field is. The numbers on the grid are foot candles on the ground, just the quality and the intensity of light on the ground, and standard Little League is 30 and 20 infield, outfield. And this kind of hits on the same information, but with that same grid that shows the transition area from the field to the walking bridge out to the parking lot, and it shows the numbers. It's hard to see. I hope you all have a copy of this and can refer to this at some point, but it just shows foot candles on the ground. Again, that's the field. This shows the batting cage. We'll have a pole along the third base line of Enki B that will have fixtures that shine back at the batting cage to illuminate that at night. This is a ridiculous slide that shows a lot of numbers, and we'll get more granular here in a second, but this just shows all the foot candles in the surrounding area with the neighborhoods, the township building, and the apartment complex that's right next to the skate park. So this This shows 0.0 is obviously zero light shining on the ground along Ivan Avenue. This is the Township building showing 0.0 foot candles on the ground at the Township building and parking lot. This is the Radnor Preserve apartment complex right next to the skate park there that shows obviously 0.0. So you know what we're getting at here. Everywhere around the field will have zero light shining down. Important things to note too. I think I skipped over this slide, but the Township ordinance for pole height is 80 feet. The highest pole that we'll have, which will be down the third base line, is 70 feet. The fixtures are LED lights, and they shine at a 26-degree angle down towards the field. It's not a light that shines out, it's down. It's almost a canopy light that shines a beam of light on the field. So if you're at a distance, you'll see that there's light on the ground. Similar if you have flashlights shining on the ground, you can see from a distance that there's light, but not light shining at you. So all very important there. So, sorry. So yeah, Musco is, success with Musco is Memorial Field. They've used Musco for the past, I don't know how many years, and it's been very successful. They use a control system called Control Link that everybody has access to, or anybody that gets access to, and I think Tammy has access to Memorial Field. She can shut the lights off at any time, but it's a timer. It shuts off at, I think, 10 p.m. every night. I think what we're going to agree on is 10 p.m., that the lights are going to turn off with about a 15-minute grace period for people to egress to the parking lot through the transition area. So it's all controlled, it's all cutting-edge technology with LED lights, and it checks the box for all the Township ordinances. So I'll turn it back over to Tom.
So as Brian said, we've spent a lot of time in Radnor Wayne Little League trying to make sure that this not only helps our kids, which is very important to us, but that we do what we always try to do, which is we try to be good neighbors. We don't want to create an eyesore. We don't want to create issues. We get along great with the folks that live alongside the fields that we play at, and we want that to continue. We're really here tonight just because we wanted to present to you an idea of, without building more fields in Radnor Township, how we can have enough time for all the kids who want to play to get to play. So with that, we'll open the floor. If the commissioners have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Thank you. Before I open it to commissioners, Director Cohen, do you have anything to say about this? This is your area.
I do. First of all, I want to thank Radnor Wayne Little League and everybody for coming out tonight and all the work that you put into this project. I know this has been ongoing for several years. Additionally, I want to thank the Parks and Recreation Board because this is something they worked on also. They heard a lengthy presentation back on December 8th from Radnor Wayne Little League. We had a lot of discussion, and obviously they supported it and moved it through to you for your review. A couple things I just want to highlight about the memorialization of this whole project and the agreement that we would engage in with Radnor Wayne Little League. First of all, they have agreed to take on the utility costs that come along with this. So even though we've heard a lot about them taking on the project, it's 100% funded by Radnor Wayne Little League. They are also taking on the utility costs as part of that, which will be memorialized. There's an agreement I know that was provided to you in draft for your review as part of the packet tonight. So I think that's really an important piece to it. So folks understand that even when the lights are, hopefully installed, we're not taking on that operational cost. So that is something that they are going to manage. How that functions is something obviously we would work out, whether they reimburse the township or the utility becomes assigned to them. Most likely what will end up happening is the township will continue to bear the costs and then they'll be reimbursed directly by Radnor Wayne Little League since we will remain the owner. In addition, all the improvements that would be made become the ownership of the township per the MOU. We also have a 5-year term with 1-year renewable extensions to that. It gives us an opportunity to monitor the, the agreement, monitor the interworkings. If I know Radnor Wayne Little League, you've been here for 70 years, I think you're going to be here for 70 more, but just in case there's a situation that would arise, all of that would become ownership of the township and come back to the township. So I think those are a couple of the key pieces. As they noted, it is something that conforms to the township ordinances. I know we had our Director of Community Development, Kevin Konchansky, take a look at it before he left. So he did have a lengthy review. As far as operation, they'll maintain the operation of it, of course, with us. I know they plan on giving us the opportunity to have the ability to turn the lights on and off, of course, so that we have that extra layer of support built in from the township. And as it was noted, of course, we have extensive experience with Musco lighting now for 10 plus years over at Radnor Memorial Park. Musco definitely is the ace in the industry. It's a very reliable system. The warranty and the maintenance that has come along with that they've supported has been amazing. So they definitely are choosing the right vendor in that regard. So it definitely comes with the township support and the staff recommendation. I know we've had some internal review of the project. So we're excited about it and excited for all that it can bring for all the generations of Little League throughout the entire program, including, our girls program as well as our boys baseball program and softball programs.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions or comments from commissioners?
So I'm wondering, you're saying that the light spillage will be contained, but how many BTUs is it adding to what's already being emitted by, the township parking, the township lights that are already in existence? What is the difference between the height of the poles currently in the parking lot versus the 70-foot poles you'll be putting in? So those are some questions I have, because I have several third ward residents who are concerned about this and light emitting into their yards and onto their street, and they already have that light spillage coming from the already existing township parking lot lights. So.
Understood, and I'll let Brian speak to the technical aspects, but one of the reasons we chose Enki B, and I apologize for not saying this earlier, we didn't want to waste the board's too much of your time, so we wanted to talk fast, but one of the reasons we chose Enki B is the tree line. Basically, we're lined with trees on 3 sides of that ball field because it's in the back, and the trees are all much higher than any pole that we would put up. We will also, we're playing baseball and softball, so we're not going to play in November and December and January. We're only going to play when there's foliage on the trees. So on 3 sides of the field, effectively there will be no light spillage whatsoever. There can't be because it's all blocked by the trees. That's notwithstanding, as I said, Brian can speak better than I can to the actual technology of the foot candles being 0, as we showed when you approach the parking lot, for example, of the township building or the skate park. So from my layperson's perspective, I think the answer to that is no light would be added anywhere over what's there now. The question, and we've done a lot of, I guess I'll call it allegorical exploration with other entities who have lights and at Radnor Memorial. The question we most often get is, for example, if you are not on Enki B or near Enki B, how intrusive would the light be? And my understanding is the 0-foot candles means you will be able to see that there is a light on. I think Brian alluded to, if I stood in the middle of the field and shone a flashlight on the ground and you were 400 feet away, you probably could tell there was someone in the field with the flashlight shining down, but that's very different than me shining a high-powered flashlight in your face from 400 feet away. So I think it would not be intrusive at all. I think it would be 0 is the answer to the question. But
yeah. So just to address the lights in themselves with the LED technology of these sports lights, they're much different than the township lights that are in the parking lot. That I don't know the pole height of the township lights, but these, actually the higher the pole is on these fields, the better they control the light. Because it's, as I alluded to earlier, they're canopy lights and they shine down as opposed to out. So they're not adding any more lights. Not sure what you meant by the BTUs, but they don't shine any more light than what than would already be there. Again, you could see that there's light if you're from a distance because it's shining down, but the pole heights for the field are 70 feet. There's one 70-foot pole height and three 60-foot.
Can you go back to that slide that shows us the light issues?
Yeah, so the best one, I think. So that's actually Enki A. That's not the field we're lighting. That's the other field, and it shows if you're looking at the infield, the brown area 0.1, 0.0, 0.0. So that's 0.1 foot candles on the ground. So the light doesn't even make it to the street over there. Again, and if you're looking at the township building here, it shows the 0 foot candles. So am I answering your question?
Yeah, and I guess BTU would be referencing the heat emitted from it. You know, that's more of an environmental.
So the LED technology, they have internal fans that control the heat.
Any other questions? I'd like to get an understanding of the cost. I totally appreciate that this is not to be borne by the township and taxpayers, but I'd like to have an understanding about what the installation costs and the ongoing maintenance.
What's the cost? It kind of varies, but
It can be, you know.
it's about $150,000. Yes.
And then ongoing maintenance, is there a annual cost, or is it as things break need to be fixed? What does maintenance on stadium lights look like?
So with the lights, we didn't go, I mean, we're a little league, we're not made of money, but we didn't want to go with the cheapest quote. We went with what we thought was the best company to do the best job for the neighborhood that we're in. And with that additional expenditure is a 25-year all maintenance, no cost warranty that comes with it, with the lights, which I think Tammy referenced, the township would own the lights.
0 cost for 25 years.
So that 0 cost for 25 years?
Correct.
To maintain?
Yes.
150,000 approximately, not holding you to it, to set it up?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Jones?
Would you be able to share the presentation with us?
Oh, yes.
Email it to us?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I have a copy and I can send that out
Thank you.
at the conclusion of the meeting. I'll PDF it and send it around to the commissioners.
It's attached to
Cool,
the Parks
thanks.
and Rec meeting too, I think.
There was just one change where they zoomed in more for this presentation on those foot candles so you could see it a little bit better. That was just something we wanted to highlight a little bit more that was blurred in the presentation at Parks Board.
Thanks, Tammy.
Commissioner Riley?
Yeah, comment. It's LED lights. It's not HID lights. The amount of to run them, it's like a fourth the amount to run them cost-wise. They don't heat up like the old style did, which is mostly you're just getting heat from them and not getting the light. The LED, you are getting the light from it. And when it's up higher, it's like a beam of light going down. So all this area could be lit up, but 10 feet away, it's dark. It's not a flood lamp that's just spreading it out. It's aiming it down on the field. It's very good.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just on that note of funny, I did not know this when I became president of Radnor Wayne Little League years ago, but we do actually have an entire stock of lights from Veterans Stadium. Yeah, they are. Yes, we do. We have them. So we could never use them for this because they would be hot and way too bright, but we do have them. We'll see if anybody wants them as souvenirs of the
I've
old
seen them,
Radnor.
they're still there.
They are? Thank you.
Hey, Tom.
Go ahead.
All right, thanks. Can you go back to the slide where it shows the placement of the sites?
That one?
No, there's another one.
Placement of the poles or the?
Yeah, the placement of the poles.
Yep, so, sorry. You can probably see that best here.
All right, so
A1, A2. So A1 is down the third baseline,
Yeah.
A2 is first base.
So on the first baseline, how many trees have to be removed for the installation?
0. No, this is B on the right. So, yeah, sorry, yeah. So no trees.
All right, you're able to get those in without any?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yep.
Now, can you go to the parking lot? No. There's another one.
All right, there you go.
There's
All right, I'll find it. Not that, not that. So that's Radnor Preserve.
Okay, I mean, that's good enough. So, my kids played a few years Little League Baseball. I think one of the biggest issues is going to be parking, because I assume with lights, the idea is that you'll be in better position to hold tournaments. So what would you do on a Monday night, if there was a tournament, or if there was an event here at the Township building, where, I mean, part of the problem is we have about 12 to 15 spots out there that are taken up by Township or police vehicles. And what happens is parents end up parking along the grass, or they end up parking illegally back in the apartment buildings. I mean, to be good neighbors, we have to do our due diligence to make sure you have appropriate parking, so we're not being invasive to the neighbors back in the apartments, or spilling out into the neighborhoods and parking on the streets and then walking where there's no parking, where there's no sidewalks.
So thank you, Commissioner. We don't believe there'll be any additional strain of parking over what would happen on a normal game. And from Little League's perspective, while we might be able to host a district game at night, that's different than a tournament where you'd have a bunch of teams playing. I think part of the answer, and this is kind of goes above and beyond Little League's perspective, I mean, all of our ball fields in Radnor, we do share with other teams. And I'm speaking a little out of turn here, if another team was to hold a tournament, they can still only have one game on one field. So I think the parking constraints become more of an issue if you were playing on multiple fields at the same time. But as far as a night game would go, you would only be able to play on B because only B would have lights. So at the moment, we would always have less of a need than we have on Saturday afternoon, for example, today, when we have games going on both fields, and parking is still agreeable. There's still places to park, notwithstanding those two games going on. So I don't think this would exacerbate anything that doesn't already happen. And if I could just complete that, apologies on the other part of your question. As far as apologies, I lost my train of thought. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Basically, parking would be half.
Can you please come? You need to come up to the mic. You need to come up to the mic.
I'll grab that one. So the way our games start today, we start at 5 p.m. with the Township's already in motion. So we're there playing when the Township's going, right? We have one field, and when the lights go off, meaning the sun goes down, I'm making this up, 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, Township's empty. We have one field, two teams playing. We've worked diligently with the Township when we have conflicts and there's things that are going on inside the Township. We worked in partnership with you to make sure we're not there when you guys have things going on. So that wouldn't change. So I hope we answered that question.
And that's Jake, apologies. That's what I was going to say is we already, when the Township tells us, hey, we have this going on, even if it's a Saturday afternoon when we have lots of games we play, we just don't play that day. And this would be the same thing. We wouldn't play if it was going to interfere with something where parking was needed.
Sure. Oh, okay. No, I appreciate that. Now, am I wrong in thinking that Field B it's been used primarily as Little League for the last, X number of years?
That's correct.
Okay. I've heard multiple comments, and I think an email came out today that referenced the boys and girls, so baseball and softball. So is the idea that softball will be played here?
Yes, softball will be played here. So we have had softball games periodically over the last several years to kind of test it out. For those unfamiliar, typically softball is played on a field that doesn't have grass in the infield. Baseball's field is played where we do have grass. So it turns out, I have children in both sports, softball's pitching mound is in front of the actual rise part of the baseball mound until they're 13 or 14 years old. So softball can be played on Enki B without the boys' mound interfering until the girls are 12. So we would have the two older girls' levels able to play night games, and softball would be assigned times where they could do it. And then the boys, their two older levels, would also be able to play here at night.
So there will be, I don't know, I'm not saying even split, but both groups will be given appropriate amounts of time on the field.
Absolutely. And it'll probably depend on numbers. We're very happy to say, I mean, we struggled years ago with our softball program. It's actually growing at a significantly faster pace now than baseball is. So it would be great if one of these days softball has so many girls playing that they need more time on the field at night than the boys do. We're not quite there yet, but they're catching up.
Okay. And then can you just walk me through how we arrived at 10 p.m.?
So the ordinance in the township, and correct me if I'm wrong, is 10:30. What we agreed to is we wanted to be in compliance not only with the 10:30 timeframe, we wanted to cut them off at 10, have the egress at 10:15, and just be in good partnerships not only with you but with the residents. That's how that was arrived on.
So is the idea to keep kids out there till 10 p.m. practicing or playing games?
It wouldn't be, no. You know, we need time in the summertime when schools are out, curfew's 10:30, sure. We've lost hours upon hours of time on the field because of our numbers have grown. As Tom mentioned, this would open up close to 25 hours per week. You know, there's a safety issue today. We have teams, too many teams on both fields, where we're trying to shift kids in and out, have 45 minutes, there's a lot of bats, a lot of balls being thrown. There's a safety concern. That's another reason why this makes a lot of sense. So.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I played baseball through college. You know, I understand the importance of getting on the field. But if the agreement is, if the MOU is that the fields are going to be open until 10 p.m., I mean, I'm a parent. You know, I understand coaches they're gonna push the limits, and those kids will be out there every night till 10 p.m. I don't know that I think that's the best thing for the kids.
Our assumption is it will be more games than practices. And while the games might take 2 hours, I think as a Little League parent, you'll agree, boy, you hope most of them don't take 2 hours. So our assumption is it will probably be a little after 9 o'clock most nights. The games will be done. The lights will stay on because they're automated until 10. We could probably have a system in place. I know Tammy referenced that the township would have override control. We could probably have a system in place where we say, hey, Radnor Wayne Little League gets an alert that the game ended at 9:20. We could turn the lights off earlier. But our assumption is the kids probably aren't going to be there most nights till 10 o'clock. They are the older groups. I think I mentioned that. So Friday and Saturday night, you know, if the games go a little longer, that kids would probably get a kick out of it. I still doubt they're going to be until 10 o'clock because neither the coaches or the parents are going to want to do that on a regular basis. But
yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we added.
Can you step to the mic, please?
Just want to make sure we add, our intent is to not light the fields unless there is a game or practice. So it's not like the fields will be lighted until 10 o'clock every night. The fields will be lighted while they're in use, and we'll have the ability to turn them off, as will Tammy, when they're not in use. So
I suspect those lights will be in use.
yeah, I mean, I think they will too. As the baseball commissioner, we're not looking to have, I can tell you, we're not looking to have practice until 10 o'clock. So.
Yeah, and the reference to Memorial was made earlier, and you're right. I think there are nights where Memorial lights are on till 10 p.m., but those are usually the kids coming off at 9, and then there's an adult league or some sort of senior league that comes on from 9 to 10.
That's correct.
You know, the boys right now, when they come off Memorial at 9 p.m., the lights are shutting off with them. And in fact, the lights are shutting off before they get off the field.
Yeah.
And so just walk me through the clock. Is it 10 p.m. would be the last inning can start, or would it be 10 p.m. practice or game has to end?
10 p.m. the lights go off. For safety reasons, the ingress-egress lights, and I'm not sure if we mentioned earlier, we would also be putting probably solar. We're not sure yet if we can wire something, and we would be putting lights on the footbridge so that we'd have a 15-minute window where the safety exit lighting would basically stay on.
So the game would essentially have to end around 9:30 for teams to do cleanup of the field,
Right.
break, and get the mower out there to?
So that's exactly correct. And Little League has rules that you have to start, you can't start an inning if it's within 15 minutes of the end time, and there's a time limit on the game anyway. Right? So if we schedule a game to start at 7:30 and it has a 2-hour time limit, nobody's going to start an inning after 9:15.
Okay. In addition to games and practices, would the fields be used to host camps at night?
Not for Radnor Wayne Little League, but part of our proposal to the township would be if the township wanted to have camps and wanted to have us help with those camps, we'd be happy to do that. I did want to mention on the prior part of the conversation, particularly in the earlier part of the spring, we have a great deal of trouble getting games in, even if we start them at 5:45. So in that part of the spring, we probably wouldn't be scheduling late games anyway. This would just allow us to finish the games that right now we're not even getting those games in and finishing them. So that's another component that this would add the ability to help us do that.
And what was the time frame during the year? It was March till October?
We're assuming we'll be using them probably the last week of March, maybe, until probably we finish our fall ball season at the end of October.
Okay.
Like July and August, so Little League spring season, softball and baseball, are effectively over end of June at the latest with tournaments. There might be some tournament teams that run into July, but the heavy usage would be until probably early June, and then it would pick back up in early fall. So.
Okay. And then last question, and this, Tom, I'll give you a break on this one. This is for Tammy. Tammy, one of the concerns I've always had with Memorial is the amount of unsanctioned training that's allowed to go on there. We will make sure, like, if baseball and softball are not practicing or playing games, that we will not have the lights on.
No, that's correct. They will not be.
All right.
And Radnor Wayne Little League will have the primary use of those lights to be turning them on and off as far as the operation goes. So that's not something we're going to be controlling for them, just to make that clarification. The only time we would jump in and do that is if there's some extenuating circumstance that happens where some assigned sanctioned member of your group isn't putting that control in place and physically turning the lights off. And then also just as far as any like ancillary usage that's non-Radnor Wayne Little League, we hope to have Night at the Ballpark potentially use the lights the night maybe we have that, maybe some one-off events here and there, but there's no plans for any extended camps or programs happening beyond Radnor Wayne Little League because we know that they will be the primary user of the lights as well as the programming that's happening there. So right now our department has no plans for extended usage for camps and programs.
All right. Thanks, Tammy. Thanks, Tom.
Absolutely.
Any other questions from commissioners?
Thanks. Yeah, a lot of the stuff have already been answered. I'm okay. I don't think that there's going to be much of a traffic impact. I don't think you're pretty much only going to be there unless you are a parent of the game or a grandparent or whatever. So I'm not overly worried. Parking can be tough. You know, if you want the amenities, then you have to give up parking. It's just how it is. A couple concerns that I do have. I was pretty active in the whole Villanova light changing situation. I think that these LEDs are significantly better than the halogen. Don't get me wrong. But if B was ever turned into turf, then based on the drainage, you could probably use it more in weather like we have right now. The problem that creates is you get this gigantic haze. It looks like a bubble, looks like, you know, what is it, Close Encounters of the Third, I don't know, kind or something. It looks like there's an alien ship going on. So I would like to hear it from you that you won't turf the field. You have no desire to turf the field. So when it is wet, you'll and I don't know if you can because you do need that. I wouldn't want water on that turf rolling into that stream right there. I think that's a big issue. Speaking of turf and baseball, and you saw that a lot of these baseball players Gary Carter, Darren Dalton, et cetera, cancer. I'm sure the turfs are better these days, but again, I don't know what those materials are made of. So that is an environmental concern. I'll just ask you, you don't plan on turfing it anytime soon?
We have no plans to turf it,
Awesome. That's a
and
great answer.
frankly, we
Well,
wouldn't have
that's-
any money to do it at
that's
the
what I wanna
moment
hear.
anyway.
Cost, I think it's very generous that you're paying for it. And, you know, we're lucky that you will step up and do it, pay for it, run it, as well as pay for the electric. That cost does go to, like, kind of what was alluded to before, like if you rent it to another organization or another organization wants to use it. I know that, I think Villanova's baseball field, if I'm not correct, is on Germantown Pike. Am I right
Yes,
on that?
it is.
Yeah, okay, because I drove by it a couple. So, yes, yeah, so is that something that they might want to use every now and again? Because it is a high, I mean, I know it's not regulation, but it's close. And, you know, or they could maybe take BP in the cages or, you know, have a little bit of ground, you know, they have no desire at that point. You wouldn't rent it out, there's no sharing.
We would have, so just
Still our park.
by way of very
The
brief
lights will be
background, the
ours.
township owns and controls the park, and they're kind enough to share it with us. We would never bring in an outside group like that without the township, but
Not any kind of, okay.
I would imagine, and I know you heard a little chorus behind us, all of our kids our boys have just moved onto the bigger field. And I think we've all at some point tried to practice on the small field, and it did not go well. So they do feel like they're awesome, like they're 10 feet tall, but
Can hit dingers all
I don't think that would work.
No, I get it. It's just a concern that I have.
Understood.
Because this stuff creeps, and before, you know, that it's too late. Another issue is the equitability, and I think it's great that it could be used for softball, and I think as we move forward in the process and as you give back to the community, that the women's or the girls softball should be also on the forefront of an equitability. And I actually did talk to Tammy. You know, when I first came on, the comfort station at Emlyn Tunnel is a little bit smaller. It doesn't have, and a lot of that was my fault. It was Little League versus the neighbors. It was trying to find a balance, and then you try to find that balance, and you're like, oh, well, there's this whole other segment of 10-year-old girls that have now been, they've lost out. So I think that looking at that in the future, I think that's important. So I'll just put that there for you to do what you want. I'm guessing that the neighbors have all been contacted. You sent letters out within X amount I guess we'll hear back from them, but have there been any negative feedback? Anyone, I don't want it? Tammy?
Commissioner, I can answer that.
Yeah.
We did send letters out in early November
Okay.
before we met with Parks Board, and we also sent out another letter in early January. Here on January 6th, the letter went out. And it went out to residents approximately 1,000 feet. I think the guidelines kind of say when there's a lighting project about 500 feet, so we did go 1,000 just to kind of finish different streets and roads that we were already sending to. And there was really no adverse comments that have come back, so.
I will say, Commissioner, apologies for interrupting. Two concerns that we did hear were the trees and the wildlife. The trees, as you heard, we went out of our way to not have to disturb the trees to try to address that concern. From a wildlife perspective, to be frank, we couldn't find any credible study that said it had any effect on birds or other wildlife, but we did, as I said earlier, we sort of allegorically explored. We have a lot of other local Little Leagues who have lights. We have lights at Radnor Memorial, and we did go to those folks and say, have you had issues with death of wildlife or anything along those lines on the property, on adjacent properties? And the information we got back was that it had no effect whatsoever. So we tried as best we could to follow down those paths when we got those comments.
All right, just a couple more. So the lights over the bridge, that's a big thing, because that could be, it's very dark. You hit on that. That was one of the questions, so that's good that you could put some kind of solar lights or at least something. Getting at like 10 o'clock at night, if it's 9:30, then they need to be on till 10, and then they're going to have to clean up. So that's important. This is something, as we talk about lights, I think we also need to talk about sound. So would there be a loudspeaker? There's a scoreboard there, I know. What would the usage of a loudspeaker system, and would that affect any of the neighbors? How far would that sound carry?
So we do not currently use loudspeakers or announce things other than if we're having a special game. When we do our all-star games,
Yeah, I know the All-Star game,
we
but
announce
if
the
it
kids.
is a bigger night, it's a special thing, like Wrigley. When Wrigley first got lights, it's like this big thing. So, and the kids are going to want to hear their name under the lights.
Still is a big thing.
Right. And I can imagine that there will be a context in which we would do it. So we don't have a PA system or any sound system on the field.
Okay.
We use sort of those store-bought little speakers,
Got it.
and we aim them out towards the field. Most of the parents complain that they can't hear their kid's name because the speaker only goes so far and it's aimed at the kids on the field, but it's the best we can do for now.
I was just
going to comment on the portable speakers.
Okay, just something like that, be cognizant of, I don't know, maybe you have to stop a loudspeaker or sound system at 8 o'clock. I don't know what that time is. I think you'll find that out from neighbors or parents or from someone, whoever, but just to be cognizant of that and kind of work that in.
And Matt mentioned earlier, I mean, we are very understanding that this is a new thing, and if it happens, as time wears on, we're going to hear concerns, and we're happy to work with the neighborhood to address them.
Sure.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that also goes to Tammy's comments on the MOU, right? So as time goes on, as we learn more of, feedback, what we should do, take suggestions, obviously we'll continue to be moldable and receive those suggestions and put them into practice.
And then finally, the wiring. How much of the turf are you going to have to, of the field or the outside, are you going to have to dig up to lay wire? I'm not talking about the install. I'm not worried that you're going to put a light there and then you're going to need to do stormwater for it. Like, I get it. It's a light. It's probably 4 feet by 4 feet, and then that's
Right.
the base, and then you put it up. But how much damage isn't the right word? You're going to have to rip up the field somewhat. I mean, is easy, or how does that work?
Very, very minimal, if any. The poles that go on the ground, as you point out, Sean, I think it's 500 square foot of earth disturbances, and the statute will probably be closer to 50 square foot. But it turns out that I'll give my predecessor a shout out. Bill Quinn, the previous president of Radnor Wayne Little League, was a much smarter guy than I am. The wiring everything's there already that we would need. So they anticipated the need that we might have to connect things in. Brian, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so not the wiring, the conduit was run from the junction box to the field, so it's already done. But the contractor that Musco uses has done countless fields for them, and they have it down to a science, and they dig, fill, and seed every night before they leave. So whatever they disturb, they fill in that night.
Okay.
And it's the township ordinance was 500 square feet, and it's nowhere near that.
Okay. And then,
I'm going to like you to wrap this up.
well,
and
Commissioner
we gotta
Abel
talk
spoke,
next
and
steps.
I'm
Thanks.
and
You
I'm
said
also-
last
no,
question.
No, it's not the last
You
question.
said last question. I
No,
was
it isn't.
jumping in.
I am the liaison to the Parks and Rec.
It's
I'm sorry that
fine.
I'm going to ask my questions, all right? You didn't do this to
Sean, you
anybody
said
else.
last question, so I was
No.
jumping in.
No.
If you're not done, you're not done.
I'm not
Ask your
done.
question.
So how can I, I have I have 3 more questions, Moira. I could have asked my 3 questions by now. But now I lost my train of thought.
I'll go back to you. John Rice, can you speak to us about next steps and the MOU for this, please?
Sure.
I have one more question when you're done.
I think tonight's presentation was to get a weather forecast from the board, whether to go forward with this or not. There is a draft MOU in here, which Tammy and I talked about it briefly. There's some other work that needs to be done. There's things that have come up tonight that are not mentioned in the MOU. So
Such as?
who's going to pay for the utilities for one.
No, that was in the MOU.
It's in there.
They said they would do that.
It is addressed, John, in the MOU.
Okay. There's some other language in here that needs to be addressed, but, or rewritten. There's some things in here that are unclear. This is not the meeting to rework the MOU meeting. This is to authorize the staff and myself to bring it back to you as a finished product, and then approve it at your next meeting.
All right, well, I get one more question, so I'm going to ask it. With that master override, who's going to have it, who has control? Would that be something that could be done in the township building so the police could turn it off because they're always here? Just could you?
So it's, I don't think we got to give extensive detail. It's actually an app. So the township would have, and it would be up to the township who the township gave that access to that would have that master override. Go ahead. Our Musco representative.
Good evening, Andrew O'Connell with Musco. Simply put, it's a smartphone app called Controlling, and the township or the Little League gives authority to who they deem necessary to turn it off, on and off remotely.
Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, so I did have a couple of constituents express concern about the lighting, but I want to thank you for giving such a clear explanation about how the lighting is controlled in terms of spillage. I'm just wondering if residents still continue to have questions after I try to alleviate their concerns with my best explanation of how the lighting is controlled. Could I refer them to someone at, to, I guess, the Musco representative?
And if they want to reach out to Radnor Wayne Little League, we'll answer whatever we can, and then we're happy to put them in touch with Andrew, and he's been gracious enough to offer to help.
Great,
with
thank
anything
you.
we need.
And I guess when the presentation is sent over, Tammy, if you can give me those contacts, that would be great. Thanks.
Tom, I just have one last question. Does the MOU reference Field A?
Hold on, Jake. I don't know if you're allowed to ask those questions. You may need Commissioner Maroney's
Stop
permission.
it, Sean, stop. Go ahead.
Maura gave me the nod. I'm okay.
And I'm sorry, Jake, in what manner? I don't believe it does, but was there something that you wanted us to?
I mean, there's no interest on the Little League's behalf of putting lights on Field A, correct?
No, never.
Can we add that language into the MOU that Field A will remain without
Absolutely.
lights?
Be happy to do
I
that.
think that would give some of the neighbors some confidence that it'll be strictly restricted to the backfield.
We would absolutely agree to that, yes.
Okay, and for Commissioner Farhi, you should never reference Wrigley Field in this context. August 8th, 1988 was a great night for Cubs fans, but the city of Chicago still restricts the number of nights they can play games. So we're not doing that.
Having been a neighbor of Wrigley Field for several years, we appreciated the limits, but it's a fun park.
We'll never talk
Great.
again.
So this is not a vote. This was for you to present to us. Thank you very much. Very thorough. Appreciate your patience with the amount of questioning and your details. So do appreciate that. I think we are giving direction to staff to continue conversations. So you'll be hearing from Director Cohen and our solicitor, John Rice,
Yeah,
while you work through issues with the MOU.
This is an easy one, but there's a lot of clarity that needs to be put into what was produced by the Little League. So your next meeting, I think, is February 13th. So who should I need to communicate with somebody from the Little League.
That would be me.
Okay. I'll send
Happy
you
to do
back
it.
my comments, and
Thank you.
I'm sure Dave Falcone will volunteer his time also.
You will. It'll wind up going to him anyway. Thank you all very much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Of course, we appreciate it. So,
Yeah.
oh,
I'm just gonna
there's
take
no
this
vote, so no public comment.
either
But feel
strike
free
or
to email
insert
me
some
or anyone
stuff.
else with any of your
Pretty
thoughts
bare
on this
bones,
issue.
right? How you doing, Mark?
Maybe at the end in public comment, you can
won't
speak
take
to us about it. We're moving on to item E, which is Resolution 2023-02,
Yeah, I was in the car when I saw it.
authorizing payment for the emergency repair of the South Aberdeen
Yeah,
sanitary
tomorrow's
sewer to K.E. Seifert Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $200,000, and to Gray Brothers, Inc. for the amount of $20,465 to be paid from the sanitary sewer fund. Can I ask for conversations to be held in the hallway? And then I will kick this to Mr. Norsini.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just to give a little context, so the resolution wasn't too in-depth. This particular project, we made no less than 7 repairs to a sewer line that ran off of Aberdeen Avenue. Interestingly enough, the sewer line runs under CVS, under the car wash, and under the Sunoco station. And one of the breaks was actually in the service bay of the Sunoco station that we had to go in. So the work is complete, the restoration is done. I'm just waiting for the final invoices to come in. We anticipate that this will be under $200,000, and the $20,000 was for Gray Brothers that we used during the time we were there. It was quite a complicated and head-scratching repair, but we got it done, and that's our sewer system.
Thank you very much. Can I hear a motion in a second?
Second.
Is there any comments from commissioners? Is there any public comment on this? I will call the vote. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Thank you. Moving on to Resolution 2023-11, authorizing the payment of change order number 4 to N. Abonizio Contractors Incorporated for the installation of the library sanitary sewer, additional junction boxes and inlets, and related piping, Radnor Middle School basin outlet plate, and an estimate of the cost of the temporary parking lot striping, and for a credit for the use of recycled stone in the parking lot for the South Wayne Municipal Parking Lot Flood Reduction Project, Contract B22-002, in the total amount of $66,006.08 to be funded from the Stormwater Fund. Mr. Norsini.
Thank you, Commissioner. So just, I do want to tell the board we are well within our contingency amount. We're still less than 30% on this project. The striping, if you've gone by, it is a parking lot again. It's a new parking lot. So we have it temporarily striped. There's some more work that needs to be done before we can open it up. Little background, our solar lights won't be here till April. So we're going to have solar-powered tower lights in there once we open it. Hopefully we'll get it open in the next 2 weeks if the weather works with us. And it would be next spring we still have work to do, final paving course, trees, grass, all that good stuff. But this is still involved a lot of the work we had to do when we encountered groundwater and had to raise the system and yet it still had to keep its efficiency. So that's where the extra sewer line came in from the library. And one of the other change orders in here, this was quite a hot topic last year. There is an outlet structure for the Radnor Middle School system that's under the field. And that system was called out when it was designed and built to have an orifice plate, which restricts flow. And that was never installed. And one of the items here is for our contractor to install that. It's somewhat involved. It's a $25,000 item. But that's a quick summary of all these changes.
I have a question. Our Public Works, they have line stripers, correct?
Correct.
Can they do it?
The temporary line striping is already in.
Okay, but could they do the line striping so we don't?
I don't want to speak for the
Yeah, I know that you don't want to speak
gentleman
for
over
Ricky,
there.
but I'm just curious why that wasn't the case then.
I mean,
maybe that's my question.
So it's a $4 million contract. Normally, we always have the contractor do it. They control it, the timing, when it gets done. They have the proper templates for the arrows. We'd have to go purchase those templates for the arrows, like the right only, left, in and out. My suggestion, again, I don't want to speak for the guys over at Public Works, but my suggestion is that the amount of money saved, it's a lot of their time.
Okay.
Can you speak to the credit for the use of recycled stone?
Yes, so the original specification was for, it's called 2A modified stone. It's from the quarry. Our contractor has
recycled stone, which actually meets the gradation requirements, the size of the stone and the sand and everything, the screening that's in it. It's very good stone. That's what was used as the backfill for the Terra arches. I was very happy with that stone. And for a $9,000 credit in my using engineering judgment, it was a good way to go.
Thank you. Are there other questions from commissioners? May I hear a motion to approve? And a second?
Second.
Is there any public comment? I'll call the vote. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. And moving to the last item on the business agenda, it's a motion to approve the authorization to receive sealed bids for the 2023 Super Pave resurfacing project budgeted at $1,525,000 to be funded from the Liquid Fuel Fund. You showing us something, Mr. Norsini?
Yes, I am in a moment, Commissioner. Oops, sorry. So at 30 seconds a slide, we should be out of here in about half an hour. Just kidding. So this is about the 2023 Super Pave resurfacing project. This is a combined project. We did not do our resurfacing program last year. So this is all together. The total budget for the combined projects last year and this year is $1.52 million. It's a standard project, includes milling, base repair, resurfacing, pavement marking on various streets through the township. We're scheduled to do 5.1 double lane miles. In your packet was a list of all the streets to be paved. I won't go through them all. I'm assuming everybody had a chance to look at them. I am very happy to show this. So you folks know our GIS coordinator, Dave Kelly. This was put together by Dave, right? It shows all what we're doing this year. The single lane is where we're following up the utility work. The double lane is the standard work. Dave also has about the last 10 years worth of paving, and he will be creating layers for us of that. So next year's program will be able to show you considerably more. But again, I want to thank Dave for that and for the many more he will make. Here's our schedule. We're requesting board approval tonight. If we get that, we will finalize the bid package, and Melissa Kahn will advertise for us. We'll post this on Penn Bid in February, receive bids in April, give us a chance to review them for completeness, and then we would be back to this board at the second meeting in April on the 24th to award the project. And if we do award on that night, work is planned to begin in the summer. We would hope we can get all this work done in the summer. That's why we're here before you in January, with a completion date of Labor Day. And that's all I have. If there's any questions.
Yes, Commissioner Myers?
More of a historical question. Do you have a list that sort of rotates around the township? I mean, is that how you came up with this list? Is there 2 years due or something?
So this list, so actually there's some roads like Bailey Road, Fitzwilliams, we were hoping to get done last year. We couldn't make it, so they automatically flipped to this year. There will be what we call a fallout list. So I'll add maybe 10 roads as fallout so that if the bids are very favorable to us and I can get additional roads in, we will do so. The way our bid package reads, it also says if the bids aren't favorable, we have the ability to remove roads, which I hope we do not have to do. So those roads on the fallout list just keep rolling, and every year we try to get, so if they don't get done this year, they automatically go to the 2024 process.
I guess what I'm asking is they're chosen by virtue of being on a list or by condition of the road?
Condition, and
okay.
It's a group effort. Public Works, Engineering. I asked them for input, and
the complaint department, right.
Any other questions from commissioners? Any public comment? I will ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
And a second. All in favor say aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I will now move to reports of board liaisons. Anybody like to start?
I wish that in the future that at the beginning of the meetings, we can talk about open positions. So with that said, there is one vacancy in the Parks and Rec. So in the future, you could announce which committees have vacancies. I think that would be a big help for the community. Thanks.
I appreciate you noting that there's a position at Parks and Rec. Anybody else? I will move to new business. Any new business? Any old business? And public participation? Okay, I will ask for a motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor? Thank you very much.